Good morning. Welcome to the Criminal Justice Committee meeting of March 17th, 2021. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Could we have a roll call, Kelly?
Mr. Hess?
Present.
Mr. Long?
Present.
Mr. Lear? Mr. Snipes? Ms. Peters?
Present.
Ms. Parker?
Present.
Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Carrico?
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Present.
Mr. Daryl Smith? Mr. Swanson?
Present.
Mr. Kirkstra?
Present.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Collins? Mr. Kenneth Smith?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler? Mr. Searoy? We have a quorum.
Thank you, Kelly. Just a note before we get going here, this meeting's agenda was posted on Facebook and on the building outside the front door there. So for those of you who have inquiring minds. Kelly, we have no public comment? Okay, could I have a motion to combine and approve the minutes from the February 10th meeting? Mr. Smith? Any second out there, Mr. Hunter? Kelly, we need a roll call for that.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Carrico?
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Aye.
Mr. Daryl Smith? Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Collins? Mr. Kenneth Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
Thank you. First up is a judicial report from Judge Kramer. Is Judge Kramer on Zoom? No. Seeing no report, we'll move on to Sandy Ciancia at Circuit Clerk's Office. Sandy.
Good morning, everyone. You have all my reports, my financial reports. I don't think there's anything unusual. The regular end of period listing, the cash book for the circuit clerk, we dispersed $277,189.59. And for the new people, if you have any questions about that, those are all the funds, all the money that we collect, that's where they all get dispersed. So that's about it for that. The Harris & Harris open inventory analysis, it looks like we only turned over 311 cases so far this year to them. We don't have very, the courts have been a little slower with the pandemic and stuff. We came back in January, so we're a little bit delayed, I think, with some of the, closing the cases and dispositions, et cetera. So that should be, more pronounced next month. The state's attorney collection report, I'm not sure if I got that over to Kelly this time or not, but this year so far, that court call has brought in $18,703.56. And then the Harris & Harris local debt recovery program, that is, we've collected $71,491 this month for a total of $152,226 for this year. Now that the tax season is ramping up, it'll ramp up a little more. However, we just got an email from the comptroller that the comptroller's office there has to be certain criteria met for people with their income bracket, and if they don't meet the criteria, they're not going to be holding their licenses for payment. And the same with the tax refunds. If they don't make enough money with their Illinois tax refunds, they're not going to be collecting it like we have been in the past. So it'll be interesting to see what the difference is moving forward this year. They will be, I did check with my representative from the local debt recovery program in the comptroller's office yesterday, and he said that we're still collecting the state returns. And for those that are state employees, they're being withdrawn right out of their paychecks. So it'll be interesting to see the difference between last year and this year. So are there any questions with that?
Any questions, anybody? What else do you have for us, Sandy?
The only other thing, I took the computerization off of the report, but I do have a meeting set up with both vendors next week, and it's going to be a Zoom call, and we are going to walk a case filing from beginning to end and see where the testing breaks are happening so that we can put this project to bed once and for all, get it moving forward. So I can have a better report about that next month once we get them together. And the other thing I'd like to do is invite anybody that wants to come by, but especially the new people. If you've never been in my office, I'd like to invite you to come by and see what our operations are firsthand and see, just see our office. So if you're interested, I would love to have you. I'll provide coffee or whatever. So just give me a call or let me know.
Mr. Hunter, you have a question for Sandy?
Yes, Sandy, do you have an in-house expert regarding your computerization? Also, if you don't have a specific person, do you have a committee with that particular expertise?
I have I'm drawing a blank right now on her title, but she is the system administrator. She has experience. She formerly worked at Riverside and has done at least 3 of their case management system transfers when she worked for them. So she's very sound in knowing how to do all of this. And so I do have her for that part of it. And what was the other question?
You have a committee. You know, you
Not
indicated you're meeting with the 2 vendors. I would think that you would know internally what the glitches are. And how long have you been in this system, working on this system?
How long? Say that again. I'm sorry.
How long have you been working on this system?
10 years.
He's not.
We converted in 2010 and 2011. It took us a year to get everything converted over. We started with the civil cases in April of 2010. We did the traffic cases in September of 2010, and then we finished up with the criminal cases in February of 2011. So
what you're saying, Madam Clerk, is that you'll have a solution after you meet the with the 2 vendors and
Yes.
develop a plan of action?
Yes, sir.
And that's a commitment.
Yes.
And you have a written report, or will it be presented to us orally?
It could be a combination of both.
Okay,
I will let you know.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So that's
That'll-
about all I have for now.
Got all the questions for Sandy? Go ahead, Mr. Wheeler.
If I could, can I help by making a motion to accept this monthly report, State's Attorney's grand jury reports, Public Defender's Office report, Probation's report, Sheriff's monthly report, and the Coroner's report, so we can just vote once?
That would be helpful, thank you.
I'll make
Is there a
that
second? Mr. Snipes? Combine and approve, yes. Kelly, go ahead.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Lear, Mr. Snipes, Ms. Peters,
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Daryl Smith, Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Collins, Mr. Kenneth Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Thank you, Kelly. That's all for Sandy. Let's move on to Jim Rowe. No written report. Do you have something for us today, Mr. Rowe?
I do, if it didn't make it to the board, I apologize. I'll get that circulated by email this morning to everyone. Usually it does make it over. Our last grand jury was March 8th. Through that grand jury, we had 276 felony offenses that were indicted. That's a huge number. I mean, there was 51 at that grand jury alone. In the past, if we hit 40, that was a lot. So the numbers are going up. Of those cases, 71 of them are crimes against people, which are your violent crimes. And of those 71, again, the majority are felony domestics, great bodily harm, repeat offenders, and strangulation. I was just on a Harbor House call earlier this morning, and I guess within the last however many months, we've had 3 domestic fatalities occur in the county. So we're going to be looking to start sort of a task force of community leaders, people who deal with victims, survivors of domestic violence, just to get everyone at the table and figure out what our county's response is going to be, because Harbor House, I think, is well positioned to address it on the intervention side of things, the prevention side, but those are only for the individuals that come to the agency seeking out help. Those are only for the individuals that come into the system that meet with our victim witness advocates. There's a large segment of our population where these crimes are going unreported. So the idea is to start empowering their coworkers, their neighbors, people in the community who observe the bruises, who know about the abuse, so they can know what to do when they see that. But definitely troubling. I mean, that number has been high all along, but it's just continuing to go up. The judges are noticing it on the daily custody sheet. I'm sure Mr. Pennewick is seeing it too at the jail. Police officers. Domestic violence is a huge problem in our county, and it just seems to be getting bigger. So, sorry for the bad news this morning, but the numbers are up, and so are the DV cases.
Mr. Rowe, just to tag on that, the Harbor House is a valuable tool to our community, and it's well deserving of our support, not only in verbiage, also in our monetary support. So, Mr. Hunter, did you have something?
Jim, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I get so many meetings, Kankakee County Renewed Opportunity meeting yesterday, and I had mentioned to the group, as Jim Rowe said, by virtue of COVID, people are at home and so forth, and it puts a lot of stress on the families, out of work, this and that, and so forth. And Judge Bradshaw Elliott said, yeah, Mr. Rowe is correct. And I think she gave me a statistic of like 1,500 domestic violence cases or something like that. And she also indicated the things you just mentioned, a new initiative to address that problem.
So that's correct. There are probably around 1,400 to 1,500 domestic violence cases, domestic battery, whether they're felony or misdemeanor, now pending in the courthouse. Some of those have been disposed of, but they come back for review. Some of those are still in the pretrial stages. When you look at that increase in numbers, I want to caution people against thinking that domestic violence is the result of drug addiction or someone getting drunk and abusing a spouse. If that was the case, then every time someone got drunk, they would abuse everyone in their circle. But they abuse their spouse because domestic violence is about power and control. It's not about, financial problems. It's not about any of those other things, because people have financial problems all the time and they don't beat their wife. So while those things may exacerbate, or being in the home for extended periods of time without any kind of interruptions may lead to an increase in that violence, the root cause of domestic violence is still the abuser's conduct, the abuser's choice to abuse, and the abuser's desire for power and control. So to address and reduce domestic violence, we really have to get We really have to make sure we keep the focus on the abuser and his or her conduct. So, and we see that a lot. Sometimes people say, well, they should go to anger management, but it's not really an anger problem, because otherwise they would walk down the street and pop people in the face, right? But they don't do that, because it's not just about anger. It's about who they direct that desire for power and control at. As far as that initiative, so there is a bill that was proposed to create that task force on a statewide level. In our meeting this morning with Harbor House, we're hopeful that that happens. We're hopeful that that bill would pass. But even if it doesn't, we've got to do something on a local level.
Any other questions for Mr. Rowe? Mr. Snipes?
I probably agree. I agree with Mr. Rowe and Commissioner Hunter in that Harbor House is a viable resource in this community. I spent about 21 years helping the Junior League of Women, Rob and Barb and Bill and Sherry Gertine, when we would raise funds. So it was interesting that they kind of brought that up, because I contacted Bobby Brewer's mom to see if they can do what they call a reunion. I know I lost my voice some things, but I said just for the purpose of just raising the dollars, a show that we put on called the Spice of Life show. And I'm thinking, and she's gonna we gotta look at how COVID pans out in this, I guess, September, October month, or August, whatever the month was that they presented, and they're gonna see if they can put a reunion back. So I'm looking forward to seeing if there's some way we can monetarily help Harbor House out.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. Also, when I send that report around, I'm going to send everyone the link to Harbor House's 40-hour domestic violence advocacy training, and that empowers people to be advocates in our community for domestic violence. Training can be done via Zoom. It's a couple nights a week for, I think, 3 weeks. It's very eye-opening. And once you're certified through that process, you can not only volunteer at our domestic violence shelter, but you can also help us at community events, and your eyes are going to be much more open to how to help survivors of domestic violence. So I really encourage you to sign up for that if you can.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Rowe? Thank you,
everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Yes, you too. Moving on to Mr. Pennewick, Public Defender's Office.
The report is basically self-explanatory. Things are going as well as they can right now. A couple of quick issues. We are now, again, able to go see our clients at the old jail. So that is a great news as far as, allowing us to talk to our clients again, and hopefully that'll facilitate some movement in the cases. Nothing beats a face-to-face contact, notwithstanding current technology. The old jail, or the new jail, we're still working out the logistics on. Other than that, I talked briefly with Chief Kalawinzu and Mr. Rowe about Department of Corrections not transporting people. That is definitely an issue that hopefully we can at least look into in the next couple of weeks. The sheriff probably can speak better than I can on this issue, but the bottom line is we've got people in our county jail who've been sentenced to the Department of Corrections. They're simply waiting to be transported, and I think the numbers are getting larger and larger by the day. So that's something that hopefully we can work on in the near future. I'm not sure how the board can assist us, but it's possible that we might need somebody basically helping us out, having our back in that regards. Other than that, that's basically it. Mr. Hunter, I know you always talk about interns. I did reach out to Bridget Bertrand at KCC, and we are coordinating that side of the equation. I just talked to Shelley about a couple weeks ago, and I just got an email yesterday from someone requesting an internship at my office. So that's absolutely something I've been working on, and hopefully I can get that going. And that's basically all I have. So any questions?
Mr. Hunter, go ahead.
Yeah, did you say Shelley Stroud at
yeah. Oh, and
okay, Olivet?
right.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Wheeler, go ahead.
Hey, Ed, I just wanted to ask about pending cases and the numbers of them. It looks like almost 1,000 pending felonies, 3,300 traffic pending. Their misdemeanors are at 700 pending. Where does that compare? What I'm trying to look at is COVID year versus regular. What's normally pending? Is there a baseline that you might be able to look at? Is it a third? Are we about twice what we normally are? I can't.
Got the information literally 25 feet from me, probably shorter than that. Traffic skyrocketing. It just is. It went down a little bit this month, but that's probably just a temporary fad, or not fad, but temporary trend. It's somewhat deceptive because the numbers in traffic, 234 cases were open last month. When someone gets a DUI, they get the no turn signal, they get the no insurance, they get two different forms of or theories of DUI charges. So it's very common that one person gets multiple tickets. So when it says 234 cases open in February, I did talk to Mr. Capriati yesterday. The actual numbers are, well, maybe a third of that or substantially less than that. The pending felonies, like I said, I do have the information. I know I looked at it recently. They're up, but not statistically overwhelmingly so. I mean, obviously COVID has caused a problem. I'm going to say as an average rule, and don't hold me to this, be 800 total pending, 850 over the course of the years. I recall seeing as low as like 760. As Mr. Rose stated, the numbers are up regardless of COVID. So obviously if the number of felonies that are charged increase, our caseload increases also. So there is a correspondence there also, Chairman. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, what I'm trying to get my arms around is what's the backlog at the courthouse due to COVID, and how long is it going to take to get out of it, and what type of resources are going to be required to help the courts catch up? Because the longer that they sit pending, the longer they're sitting at, in jail locally for the most part. And the number's over 300 right now in our local custody, which is unsustainable financially. In the long run, it used to be 200 was an average, 212. Now 260 was the average. Now we're over 300. And some of those, like the number of those pending to go to DOC, is that 10 people? Is it 30? Is it 50? I mean, it's 21.
I think it's in the 20s. I think it's in the 20s who have already been sentenced, who would have been transported, 3 days after the plea.
Okay. I'm just trying to get my arms around this, because if we're going to have to play catch up and devote resources towards it next year, we got to figure out what that is and what the numbers are. And is the traffic call burying us? Is the felonies jury trials way backed up? Those are things that we got to think about now as we think about the budget for next year. So
I agree. And obviously, Chief Judge Kramer, we have some input, obviously Mr. Rowe and the sheriff and everyone, and the clerks and everyone. It just steamrolls. I mean, with the 2 felony courtrooms, that means in theory, the most jury trials we can do on any given week are 2. Since we reopened, we did it, we did a speeding ticket jury trial. That's just how it ended up being, so instead of trying, a serious custody case that had been lingering for a year and a half, things just happen, and here we are doing a traffic case. Now that traffic case is resolved, and that, it needs to get resolved, but as far as prioritization, I mean, we've talked about it, and we know it, we know what we should be doing and what we could be doing, short of, we're not going to get extra courtrooms, we're not going to get extra judges necessarily. It's a interesting, not thought experiment, but short of everything increasing, clerks, court reporters, so forth, we can only try, one case at a time. So I'm not sure exactly, what the solution is to that. Obviously most cases get resolved by plea bargain. Obviously the lion's share with 95% or more. So, that's probably the best avenue of attack. And, obviously we're always trying to negotiate our cases. So that hasn't necessarily changed because of COVID. It's most certainly caused a non-custody backlog because we literally weren't seeing our clients for a long time, just from logistical issues because of COVID issues. That's changing again. So hopefully that'll help move the non-custody caseload. But the custody caseload is, my number one concern, always has been, always will be. So I'm willing to meet with anybody at any time to talk about possible, realistic logistical solutions to that.
Any other questions?
Can I also add that the court calls have been pretty heavy also. Some of the traffic calls had right around 300 cases for the 9 o'clock call. And I know Judge Elliott's domestic violence call is usually 150 felonies and misdemeanors at a 9 o'clock call, which is a dramatic amount of work, you know, for everybody involved in this department.
And if I can just add to the bad news a little bit more, the Supreme Court has been having meetings across the state and all the judicial districts to discuss how they're going to lift the moratorium on speedy trials, which means at some point, you know, they're going to give the green light for that, and we're going to have to get these cases to trial in quick order once if defendants demand speedy. So that's really going to be complicate things.
That's a lot of good news there. Mr. Hunter, did you have a question?
You know, this is bad news, I'm going to say as well, too. I went to court, not myself, no charges against me, but I went as a support person for a guy, and Capriati, it was for a trial. So anyway, make a long story short, Capriati had this big, tall pile of files, and you know, he kept calling his client the names off and so forth. I said, my God, you know, and his clients didn't show up. So I said, yeah, it was really interesting. I said, now what's going to happen is that they're going to get, they're going to get stopped, and then they're going to, you know, there's a warrant out for them. And then, it's going to be all the crazy stuff, and they'll contact us, NAACP, saying this, that, and so forth. But that's a really big issue. Maybe there needs to be some kind of in-service or a Zoom or something about the responsibilities of coming to court and face the judge. But I was just amazed sitting there, and without repeating myself, I said, how the heck, can the guy do his job when his clients don't show up? It was just kind of unique there.
Unfortunately, I don't see that going.
I'm sorry. This is an absolute direct result of COVID. These are all the dates that have been set since March of literally last year. They kept on getting continued and continued. And, this is a result of that, and it's a direct result. The judges have been very tolerant, giving us, opportunities to try to notify our clients. But the reality is, over the course of a year, phone numbers are absolutely disconnected. I would say a large portion of the people have moved. So yes, it's going to result in what you're saying as far as warrants being issued and so forth. It's just a reality of where we're at right now.
Mr. Wheeler, go ahead.
In all fairness, I do want to say that some of these cases aren't going because their lawyers are not showing up as well. And I know of specific cases like that where people are sitting out at Jerome Combs because their lawyer hasn't shown up. So that it goes both ways.
Mr. Snipes, go ahead.
Probably for Jim Rowe as well as Ed, but more so is I know the moratorium was placed on the motion for speedy trial. My greatest concern is when that moratorium was placed on, the time allotted. Say that the person, they had 160 days if they're out, 120 if they're in. If they were at 90 days already, or maybe 100 days, then once that is lifted, if that's not contributed to them, you only really got 20 days to kind of bring them to trial?
My opinion is, in this county, traditionally over the course of the decades, we've been using, the speedy trial has been, the case law says speedy trial is a shield, not a sword. All the parties, when I was a state's attorney and now that I'm a public defender, try to work together to not create that situation where it's just chaos and there's a backlog or 20 cases set for speedy trial demands on the same date, because it just doesn't work that way. Basically with COVID, Mr. Snipes, and the fact that it's been going on for so long, it's basically, in my opinion, basically a do-over. So it's going to be basically 120 from the time of the demand, if and when when it's made, once the moratorium is lifted. So that will not be necessarily, a unique problem. It's the same, it's the way it's always been. It's starting again finally. So hopefully, we will reinstate speedy trial, and I'm all in favor of that, obviously, but we're not going to be using it as a sword to, you know, mess with the system. We're just going to hopefully just go back to where we were prior to COVID.
Mr. Pennewick, thanks for all your information. Let's move on to probation. Mr. Latham, after all that, we need some good news.
Good morning. I don't know if I have good news, but nothing to add to the report unless anybody has any questions. If no questions, just a few things. Nothing new to add to House Bill 3635 right now. I have a few Zoom calls today, 9:30 and 1:30 about that and the impact on pretrial supervision as we get closer to 2023. So hopefully in the next couple months, I'll have some information directly from the state. Second, we filled 2 vacancies. Both will start Monday the 22nd. So it took a little time, but we got that done. And lastly, Veterans Court, we have 4 veterans graduating in April on a Thursday. I don't have the specific date, but I'll get that to you soon, and I'll get that soon and get it out to the board right away. And unless anybody has any questions, that's all I had to report this month.
I have a couple of questions. Mr. Wheeler first.
Yes, thanks, Tom. You mentioned 3653? Is there like informal discussion amongst your counterparts in other counties about the doubling of the size of the probation departments? I'm hearing a lot of scuttlebutt that the end result is that probation is going to be a de facto police force or monitoring unit, and we're going to be having to double in size and head count. Are you hearing things like that? Because I'm hearing it from county boards across the state, and I'm not sure if your people are saying it too.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern with the numbers. The issue right now is the state hasn't decided the exact organizational structure of everything. They issued a report on pretrial a little over a year ago and had 3 different type scenarios in it. One, for example, is pretrial being taken over by the state and run by the state and taken away from under me or the chief judge. So they're working all that out, and hopefully clock ticking. If it stays under us, yeah, I mean, the numbers are, the numbers we always go by is about 5,000 being processed through the jail every year. And if the majority of those individuals are put on pretrial, some form of supervision, it could really hammer us. How many positions we would need, we're still working that out. But yeah, it's going to have a major impact. And we just discussed earlier how things are taking longer to get to the system. These people are on supervision longer. So yes, it's a concern, and it'll be the major part of our conversation at 1:30 today with the state as we try to get exactly what that number will be and what the state's going to do.
Are you saying too in terms of grant and aid? Because that's how the majority of these positions are funded, and that's I can see them making the mandate that would cause us to have to increase headcount substantially, but not increase grant and aid, which is an unfunded mandate. Yeah, I mean, the point we've made, and I've made, and other directors have made, is we have to have fully funded positions to make it work. That they can't fall back on the counties. It's just not there. Where the state's going to get that money, I don't know, because like we said, locally I could be looking at maybe 4 to 6 more positions in pretrial. I believe pretrial those numbers will overtake the numbers of regular people on regular probation. But if you go around the state and how many positions that might be, I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to have to do it if they expect us to supervise these people.
Mr. Smith, you had a question?
Not a question, sir, but just a commendation I'd like to pass on to Tom. Officer Christensen over there has recently went over and above, I think, in order to help a local family get one of their youngsters back on track. Fell off the meth wagon, got her back into a treatment facility, and even followed up after that for an extended treatment program. And I just want to pass on their appreciation to Tom.
Well, thank you. I'll let her know. And unfortunately, she's going to be retiring soon, so it's going to be hard to replace, but thank you.
Yep. Any other questions for Mr. Latham? Okay, thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Appreciate what your people do for us every day.
Thank you very much.
Up next, Sheriff Downey. Good morning. Nice tie.
Yeah, thanks. One time a year. Good morning. Good morning, Zoomers. You already approved the report. There's really not much other than our out-of-county count is diminished somewhat. However, offset by some of our correction staff who have moved on to other police jobs or other jobs, and so we have not replaced those, which will obviously offset that revenue a little bit. So other than that, Mr. Wheeler mentioned our locals that are continue to climb. Mr. Pennewick mentioned our Illinois Department of Corrections inmates who are awaiting transport. I have our jail inspector who works for the Illinois Department of Corrections. He is the only communication I have with the Department of Corrections, and fortunately he takes my phone calls because I call him pretty regularly, and he basically says, I'll do what I can. You know, the problem with those 21 that we referred to earlier, some of those are strictly those with Illinois Department of Corrections warrants who maybe violated their terms of their parole, and the Illinois Department of Corrections had issued what's called a DOC hold or a warrant, and they go back to the Illinois Department of Corrections where they deal with them based on that warrant. So I believe we have, at last count, I think we had 4 who really weren't even, they were obviously sentenced through our court at some point, but the warrant is not out of our court, it's out of Illinois Department of Corrections. So like I said, I'm on the phone with our guy pretty regularly saying, hey, something's got to give, because, you know, basically you as county board members and our 110,000 residents are paying to house for the Illinois Department of Corrections. So.
What's the longest we've been holding somebody that's supposed to, it's usually 3 days to transfer them. What's the longest we've had to?
Well, normally the way it works, and you're correct, I mean, the timing of it is if you get sentenced on a Friday, pre-COVID, we would contact the Illinois Department of Corrections and make what we call a reservation so that they know how many to expect. So in other words, anybody who gets sentenced on any particular day of the week, we make a phone call and say, we have 6 inmates, we'd like to make a reservation for 6. They give us the date to transport them, and then we transport them. So right now, I mean, I think we're upwards of 30 to 60 days at least, some more. And I guess I should also qualify that by saying that is not a Kankakee only issue. It is statewide, and other sheriffs are having the same issues that we are. So there is no rhyme or reason as to who they take or when they take them. They're trying to be COVID safe too. I certainly respect that. But
is there any talk of inter-county, like counties working together to come against the state? And
well, we've sued. The sheriffs have sued the governor.
How many counties were involved in that? Is that just
the entire
state?
Well, I don't want to say 102. It was more like 89, I believe. And obviously the governor is the one who initially made the executive order. He's the one that we had to sue because he's the one that made a decision. Right now, that case is still pending. So even the bills, and I know Mr. Hess is always asking about the money that we've billed the state of Illinois for housing when they weren't taking anybody, which is upwards of $380,000, I believe. Every time I send them an invoice, I get the same response saying, with pending legislation, I can't talk to you. So, next. All right, I'm hoping that you received, Kelly, did you send that? Okay, thank you so much. Body cameras, body-worn cameras. Obviously an issue that we can deal with it now, or we can deal with it prior to January 1st of 2023. I would recommend we deal with it now for a number of reasons. And probably most importantly, as I've told this committee before, I believe that body-worn cameras will protect the officer 99.9% of the time more than it will protect a suspect or offender. That's just, normally that's the way it's gone previously. I mean, it's so with that said, I got 3 quotes, and I don't know how you want me to proceed. I can tell you which one I would suggest we go with, and then you guys can tell me if you have other suggestions, or if what I'm telling you doesn't make sense. I would recommend that we do number 1, Midwest Public Safety, GTEC, option 1, which is the purchase. And the reason I would tell you that is that option is the only quote we have that has redaction software built into it. Because anytime we get a FOIA, we are going to have to redact.
It takes time.
It takes time. Now, the problem is any of these other, and you can see that option 1 of Axon, number 3, is about $12,000 less than option 1, but it does not include redaction software. And I don't have a quote for redaction software, but I can tell you that it will be more than $12,000. In addition, that option 1 includes 60 gigabytes per camera, which is more than enough for our cameras to operate and to collect everything. And obviously that's what we want. The TASER or the Axon Enterprise is under number 3. That's a 10 gigabyte camera. Option 2 under Axon is an unlimited storage camera. So that obviously takes, without question, you're never going to run out of storage. We don't feel like we'll run out of storage with option 1 of GTEC. That's plenty. The option 2 under GTAC is if we were to lease it, and you see those are standard payments every year. Those payments are consistent, $37,516 a year, where option 1 you pay up front a little bit, and then your payments for 2 years are reduced to $21,009, and then year 4, what that refresh means next to it is new cameras, and then back to $21,009. It's a 5-year warranty for these cameras. Questions? And I actually have one too, but go ahead, I'll let you ask first.
Well, just
Mr. Wheeler.
A statement first. The money will be a finance committee thing, but this committee should say is, do we want to move forward with cameras now?
Yes.
Rather than wait till 23, and I think that's what the sheriff's asking of us, and I would agree with that. The second thing would be, before finance committee, I'll have a conversation with the SAO, because I think it's got to be bid, but the specs need to be what you need them to be.
Right.
So the companies will have to match the spec that you need, but I think we will have to put this out to bid, so to speak. But I want to have that conversation offline with the SAO to make sure. Over 30 grand. a qualified bidder would be able to provide cloud storage and everything else that you need, and to the technical specs that, you know, you mentioned. So I think that, just to be safe, I think we should have the conversation. But
Mr. Snipes?
I believe with about $900,000 rolling down our coffers, that any money that can be saved, it looks like about 17,000 will be saved between leasing and another about 12 if we, well, it looks like there's a $12,000 decrease, but I would probably give it, Chev, you want to go with stretch with 4 years, because you know that's going to be coming down your office big time, or any officer big time is going to, you know, so I would agree with the 170, but looking at yesterday with our county clerk, and then here, there are some things that we have to do, so somewhere along the line it's going to get us right about $900,000, but I guess it's something that we basically have to get done. So my thing is, anytime if we can save from because it looked like the leasing, we would be 17,000 over. So the most common sense, not sense, but sense approach would be looking at the $170,000 to make a recommendation to the finance committee to see how they can work these numbers.
Did the go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The option 2, at the end of the 5 years, all of the cameras are replaced and software and everything?
We'd start over. Yeah, we'd have to start over. I mean, the cameras would still be good, they would just be out of warranty.
Okay.
So we hopefully wouldn't have to do this as expensive in five years from now. I mean, those, yeah, well, it's technology.
Technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's
changes though.
Yeah, right.
Carrying something the size of a, hiding your bow tie.
So those, the cameras are square about right here. And
anticipating in 5 years, is that refresh going to be? Is that refresh going to replace the cameras that we're buying now, or is it going to update them with the technology? As
the refresh does both.
Okay, so it would be the new technology.
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I know you guys talk, all the departments talk. What's the consensus of the various police departments regarding this stuff here? I know you guys talk and there are ongoing meetings and you interface.
That's a great question.
And I'll tag on to that too. We've done a lot of combined technology using the backbone that the county runs.
Right.
Where is that in your mind?
So I can tell you that of the agencies in town who have, or in the county that have cameras right now, Bourbonnais uses GTAC. I think Bradley, and I'm just going by kind of hearsay, but it's my understanding that they are going with Panasonic, which is this number 2 on your list. And then I don't know who else has them at this point. I know the city is looking into it, but I don't know that they've made a decision yet. So those are the only 2 that I'm aware of right now.
But you're tied into the Illinois Sheriff's Association. I'm sure you interface with your fellow sheriffs. Mm-hmm. What are they saying?
Mr. Hunter, it's actually all over the board, which isn't surprising. But I know that Kane County, I've talked with their sheriff a number of times, because obviously we want to look and see what, when we look and see what we're, trying to purchase for our people, besides asking what works, the biggest question we ask is what doesn't. And so the Kane County Sheriff, Sheriff Hain, was very complimentary of the customer service, which is very important with these things, because we don't want them down. We don't want them sitting on a shelf not working. And he was very complimentary of GTAC's customer service. So that's the only one I know now. I don't know of other sheriffs that have, some sheriffs are going to wait. Some smaller counties They wait till 2025. So some may wait. I don't have a number for you to tell you of the 102 counties how many are using body cameras right now.
Mr. Chairman, Peters.
Ms. Peters, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that we're getting the stimulus funding, which seems to be a very good time to buy the cameras. Excuse me. But other cities and counties are going to also get that funding. So these prices might go up because the demand might go up. I don't know. Can we use the stimulus funding for this? And can we get any kind of discount if we pay up front? Because it seems like, from what I've read in the paper, that the stimulus money has to be spent in a certain amount of time.
And Ms. Peters, that's a great question, and it was actually one of the questions that I had, and it wasn't about the stimulus. My question was more for the chairman and maybe Mr. Rowe, is if we can use tort money.
Sheriff, that's something we'd have to research. I can look into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a liability issue. So that was just my initial thought.
And for the as far as the COVID funds, I think we've got to wait until there's some more guidance put out there about exactly how those funds can be used and what they can be used for.
A lot of head nods on that we need to wait and see how that works.
The rules are out. You can't use the American Recovery Act funds for body cameras. It has to have a direct dotted line over to COVID. So in that one, I think we'd be stretched to justify that to the Department of Treasury. So, but that doesn't mean that allocation couldn't come from somewhere else. So I like tort fund. That sounds better to me. So well, it is risk management.
Yeah.
So
yeah, research it. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to put more on your plate, Jim.
Larry?
Yeah. No, that's no problem. The only, what complicates that though is now that it's mandated by statute, right? It's something that would fall within the ordinary expense of a county. So the state really, I don't know. I'm not going to use that word.
But it won't be mandated for us till 2023. So if we do it now,
sure. So if we do it before that, it may fall within that. Yeah. But yeah, give me a week or so to look into that. And
okay.
I'll let you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kester, go ahead.
Thank you. Sheriff, one question that I had, and I know you said you were highly in favor of this process as far as the body cameras are concerned. And it's been noted in the past that some law enforcement groups have somewhat been against it. How do our deputies and other officers feel about having these? Are they willing to participate in the program to help benefit themselves and the community?
Without having talked to all 50, I believe that the consensus would be yes.
Yes.
I know that our lieutenant who's in charge of training is a strong advocate for them as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't see a problem with our guys doing it. And again, we use them in the jail already.
Yes. And
of course, initially you get that, hesitation. Oh, Big Brother's watching the whole thing.
I've been involved in safety for a long time.
Right. So well, trust me, if they think that we have time to sit around and watch every single body cam footage or video of our building or whatever, mm-hmm. We don't.
Right.
If there's an incident, though, it's going to save a lot of butts.
Right.
And that's the important thing.
Yes,
so
yes, but I've just, as I said, we know that this has been an issue in the past with some other departments and facilities.
And I don't know if it's a hesitancy because of just the body cams itself,
yes,
or if it's the hesitancy based on this language where, if you don't turn it on, or if it malfunctions, or if you review your you're not allowed to review your body camera footage to write your report. I think there's a lot of resistance from that.
Yes.
Because the idea is to be accurate.
Right.
So, things happen so fast that things are going to be forgotten. And God forbid a police officer leaves something out and then somebody turns around and he ends up getting charged with a Class 3 felony. I think that is what the resistance is. I don't think it's the cameras themselves.
Okay.
The camera sees everything, and as a former police officer, a lot of things go on around you when
Yes.
things go terribly wrong.
One other thing, we were they mentioned storage. Is that length of time that we would keep these tapes or
the video will be, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the length, what's required.
Yeah.
I think each department has a specific time frame. There's, and I think, and Jim can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think federal court, I think we have to save everything for at least 2 years, because an individual, I think, has 2 years. I know they do at the jail. I'm not sure what it is with police, but I'm assuming it's the same with law enforcement.
Mr. Collins?
I would just like to echo what Sheriff Downey said, that 99% of the time these cameras end up helping officers more than anybody. And I think that when we look at the reform that people want in law enforcement, we should realize that a goal of that should be to make the officers themselves safer too. I think, the liability of this, if we were to get the money going and get these cameras now, could end up saving us hassle with, what if a year from now somebody brings up a report and we could have a camera on an officer that could shut down a charge? Or I think it's a great investment to get in as soon as possible for the safety of
and that has already happened, as I think Mr. Hunter could attest to in a couple other jurisdictions. So
I haven't spoken to any local law enforcement officers that haven't been in total support of wearing cameras. And I've spoken to several over the years, not just recently.
Right.
So I think it's a great deal from everybody I've talked to in the
field. Well, and I think the reason, the reason that I'd like to move forward with it, not only because I think they benefit us, but I think after they become mandatory, I think the prices may change a little bit, if you catch my drift.
Absolutely.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, I like this committee. It's, a lot of good stuff comes out of here. Clarification, we can share stuff with our people. Do you know it's going to have to be some trailer bills coming along to address 3653? Because I don't know if it was who gave an example of the problematic situations in which, let's say, you're working from 10 to 6 on a Saturday night, and it's like heat wave, 85 degrees, everybody's out drinking, partying, doing this, doing that, and you got a guy or a lady, and they got 4 bar fights, 2 domestic violence situations, and you got a right to report. So how in the hell are you going to remember all that stuff?
It's a great point. That's a great point.
And it probably happens.
And what I think the confusion is with technology is most of us, myself included, are not technologically sound as most people, but we are unable, and I think when they wrote this legislation, I think they may not have been aware of it either, but even our administrators of our system can't go in and manipulate that video. It's all watermarked, whatever that means. But what it means is you can't, if the watermark is messed up, then you know that the video was messed up, but or messed with. So not even the administrator of our system can manipulate that video without it being known. So I think that was some confusion with some of the language that was written, the way it was written. Nobody can go in and delete something that happened, or so I think that was obviously part of it as to why. But
yeah, I know that you're involved with the Illinois Sheriff's Association, and I'm sure you're interfacing with your fellow sheriffs. I would assume that there's going to be trailer bills to address that stuff, and And I'm sure they're working on some of that stuff now.
Yeah, and there's a laundry list of things that are being filed, but I mean, right now I don't have those available. There's some, but they're not anything related to 3652.
In general, I was talking to Senator Joyce last night, and he was articulating, man, Steve, you wouldn't believe the number of bills that have been filed in terms of what he has to deal with.
I could keep you guys for another 2 hours if you want to go over them, but I have much more respect for you than that. So
interesting.
Yep.
Mr. Smith from Bonfield.
Sorry,
Sheriff, have you, as in the past, the sheriff's department's kind of allowed the smaller agencies to piggyback. Have you talked to any of the outlying, Herscher, Roma, St. Anne?
We have not, only because, I mean, if they wanted to get in on this, we would certainly be willing to work with them. But no, we have not right away. We were trying to get our department taken care of initially. We can always piggyback with them as well, whatever company we choose. And it's going to be, it's a great point, because and you being from Bonfield, places like Herscher and St. Anne are going to be places that, some of these cameras are unaffordable. I mean, really. And that's why I believe that they have, especially the smaller municipalities, have until 2025, so they can hopefully save the money to do that. But that's a great point, and I will reach out to see if anybody wants to jump on.
Hang on a second. Is there anybody on Zoom? I don't want to ignore you. Is there anybody on Zoom with a question for the sheriff regarding the cameras? If not, we'll move on. Mr. Snipes.
Sandy hasn't moved in like a half an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I know in law enforcement, writing is writing is very important, because the other side, I mean, on the defense side, those lawyers look to tear anything and everything apart. And most officers, I know back in the day when we did law enforcement, before we ever had to go into a trial, you had to do on the above date and approximate time. This officer, and then everything that comes after that is ready to be scrutinized. With these cameras will now be able to curtail and be more accurate in the the officer's report, so that you don't, I mean, you're still going to be subject to the defense side, but it'll be a little bit more accurate as far as memorization is concerned.
No doubt. Thank you.
I'm sure there's going to be a learning curve to all of it, and we haven't even talked about the court system yet, about how they're going to want to view it and use it in the courts. So there's going to be a lot more to the
state's going to want a copy. The defense is going to want a copy. I mean, that's where you get into your whole redaction thing.
Okay, you kind of pounded that one. Let's move on to jail program information.
Can we get a motion to recommend this to finance, that we move on this now?
Good point.
Somebody.
I'd like to make a
How about
motion.
Mr. Snipes? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we recommend it to finance.
Unanimous second, right?
Mr. Hunter, second. I guess we need to do a roll call because we're spending money.
Mr. Hess?
No, we're not spending it. We're just moving it.
Making a recommendation. Go ahead.
Mr. Hess?
We do need to vote on it or not?
Yeah, we do need to vote on it.
Okay. Mr. Hess?
Everybody on Zoom is muted.
I'm not. Okay.
Can you unmute him?
Okay. Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Snipes?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
Aye.
Ms. Parker? Aye. Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Carrico?
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Aye.
Mr. Darrell Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Mr. Kenneth Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yeah, next, I just wanted to talk and make the committee aware of the jail program information that we have. Obviously, this past year has been a little bit rough, needless to say, because of COVID. So without allowing people in, it was pretty difficult to continue some of the programs that we had. However, during that time, we still had on our kiosks in our housing unit, we have a program called JobView. And JobView is a list of local employers who have made a commitment to hire those who may have a little bit of a criminal background. And I can tell you from where my list is somewhere here, we've had well over 1,000 views, 1,000 inquiries of those who are in custody who are looking to possibly go out and get a job upon their release. So I think that's a benefit to our community if we can get them on the employment roles. I think it benefits everybody. We also, years past, when we opened out at JCDC back in 2005, KCC came out and provided educational opportunities, and in some cases provided the opportunity for individuals to obtain their GED while they were in custody. We had a number of those who did that, and then when Governor Rauner decided to hold up the budget, KCC lost that money, so they didn't have an instructor, so GED kind of went away. And now KCC has now been able to obtain that grant for that position, so we are going to be starting up and continuing that GED program while individuals are in custody. So I think that's something that you guys should know, because I think if they can get that GED while they're in custody, I think it, again, it gives them an opportunity once they get out to say, hey, I got a high school diploma. And then lastly, our Thinking for a Change program for those who are new to the board. If you ever wanted to observe a class, we have 2 individuals who teach Thinking for a Change, and it is really a cognitive way to kind of train the mind to think differently, as opposed to the way they've thought and what got them into custody. Some people foo-foo it and look at it as just another program, but I can tell you, as one who wasn't very encouraged by it to start, I'm a firm believer in it after watching it, and I think it benefits those that are in custody, and there's actually living proof out there of those who've gone through that program who have changed their life around for whatever reason. So those are just 3 of the things that we're doing. Obviously, those things will increase as we're able to open up a little bit more. So,
yeah,
Mr. Hunter?
I don't want to just monopolize, but that stuff he's talking about is like one of the best kept secrets. And because they're doing positive stuff out there. The inmates, if given the opportunity and if they want to sign up, I mean, they're doing other stuff too when they're outside. Can you tell them about some of the job opportunities some of the inmates have secured in terms of, Ford Motor Company, et cetera, and some other things, and they were doing some tailoring and some other initiatives out there as well too. So, it's kind of neat, you want to kind of close the door if you mess up and you serve your time, et cetera. They're getting some skills out there. Thinking for a Change is a hell of a program. They change their behavior. It's kind of like some behavior modification stuff that all of us studied in psychology 201 or 101 or something, but they do some really good stuff out there at the jail. So hopefully when those guys come out of there, they can find suitable employment. So, and they can look, as he's saying, finding suitable employment. A lot of them been very successful as far as finding viable employment.
Moving on, we'll talk about COVID, which is obviously an issue. We are actually down to about 5 cases right now that are out at Jerome Combs. It has made its way through our inmates and staff, as contagious as it is. So, I mean, it affected both. And, as many precautions as we took, it certainly was made it through our facility. We're hoping that, this last group is the last, at least for now. We still have not heard anything on the vaccine. The governor has put inmates in 1B, and I know some of our staff has been vaccinated, but we have not received any information on being able to get vaccine for the inmates. Real quick, I know cashless bail's next, and I won't talk much about it because, you know, we're still figuring what the potential cost is, you know, with personnel, equipment. You know, there is a cost to do business in the criminal justice system. It costs. It costs the clerk's office, it costs the state's attorney's office, it costs the public defender's office, the judges, the police, probation. It costs money. And taking away bail money is going to affect us down the road. There is a cost of doing business in the type of business that we're in. So that cost is going to have to be made up somewhere. But hopefully we'll have a better number. I know that there's an article out there about DuPage County. They've estimated that it's going to cost them about $63 million. Obviously, we're not as big as DuPage, but it's going to cost a lot of money. Animal control update. Really nothing to report other than we have received so far this year $7,800 in donations, which is usually we average around $2,000 a year. So we're already up to $7,800. And so, you know, we're happy about that. But, you know, again, people are welcome to donate to animal control. And I know there's other animal foundations out there that are receiving money too. So, and then lastly, yesterday in the conversation earlier about warrants and people showing up to court was a perfect segue for what happened yesterday. We did a warrant detail yesterday. There were 130 warrants that that have been issued, and there's more, but these were the more serious offenders between January 1st of 21 and March 15th of 21. Mostly failure to appears. Every agency in the county participated. In addition, the Illinois State Police, TCAT, which is a Tri-County Auto Theft Unit, who also brought down agents from Grundy County and Kendall County. The U.S. Marshals brought about 20 U.S. Marshals down here. And of those 130, based on the information we had, and this number is not going to sound really great, but you know, there were 16 people that we picked up. Again, that's not a great number, but addresses change, as somebody alluded to, phone numbers change. So trying to find individuals. You know, the Illinois State Police, who doesn't participate in the warrant detail itself, but they provide traffic enforcement. They made 60 traffic stops, resulting in 57 citations, 52 written warnings. They had 6 arrests, including fleeing and eluding. An order of protection was served. A DUI drug individual who was arrested for DUI under the influence of drugs at 12:30 in the afternoon. Some cannabis arrests. So it was a successful day. As we told the officers yesterday, of which there was about 75 total. We plan to do this pretty regularly because with, you know, these are failure to appears based on, and I know that we want to use COVID as an excuse. You know, if you want to get your case done, go to court. It's that simple. If you don't want to get picked up, go to court. It's what we've said all along. Warrant Wednesday, which is a novelty type of thing, which it works, it's funny, people laugh about it, you know, whatever, they get their face on social media. We put 4 on there a week. Yeah, but that's why. If you don't want to be on Warrant Wednesday, show up to court. If you don't want us coming to your house to arrest you, show up to court. It's very simple. Very simple. And you know, we've talked so much about, and over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, we've talked so much about police accountability that we forget about the accountability of those who've been arrested. And that is probably more aggravating than anything. We understand police reform. We agree with police reform, but don't lay the accountability excuse on police. That's all I'm going to say about it. The other issue is we review all of our in custodies pretty much weekly work with the state's attorney's office and try to get those out of our jail who, if they were to be sentenced or convicted, they wouldn't serve as much time as they've served in our jail, because that certainly obviously costs us money as well. With that whole thing of making sure that the people who are releasing are going to keep our community, is not going to be a threat to our community. So, and then lastly, this is it. Some of you probably saw on social media our police officer, Dylan Lergner, who, unbeknownst to basically everybody on our department, took it upon himself to purchase a basketball hoop for an individual that he'd befriended out in Hopkins Park. And I was hesitant to put it out on social media. Obviously, we got his permission to do it, but those are things that are done every single day. And, credit to him for taking it upon himself, taking money out of his own pocket. But those are things that are done not just by our department, but by every police department. The George Floyds of the world and have given police such a bad name that I think we tend to forget all the good that happens every day. And don't get me wrong, what happened to George Floyd was atrocious and should have never happened. But let's not forget the good that goes on as well, because this is, without calling it a war, I mean, it's basically an attack on police. Every piece of legislation that gets filed seems to be a war on police, and it's frustrating and demoralizing for some people. So credit to Dylan Lergner, as a new hire, been with our department about 2 years, does a great job, and proud of him for doing what he did. So that's all I got.
Anything else? Thank you, Sheriff Downing, for what you do, and thank your officers for it.
Also, thank you for moving the meeting. That was my request, so I appreciate it. Changing everybody's schedule.
Very good. Okay, moving on to the coroner's report. Bob Gessner, I see him on Zoom over there. Hi, Bob.
Hey. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good morning to you, all the rest of you.
You're kind of low on the volume there, Bob.
I am. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to go over to the 2021 calendar summary report of all the calls we've had since December to now. You can see that our autopsies are basically averaging around 9 per month, and basically going through all of the summaries for your natural homicides, 4 homicides this year, and the suicides are up just a little bit. Their accidents, accidental incidents, basically hit mostly on the overdoses, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. There, vehicle mishaps are down right now, which is good. We're holding at 2 pending results on their cause of death. I'll take any questions we have on my summary report.
Any questions about the summary? Okay, Bob, what else do you have for us?
I hit the overdoses right now, which it's very concerning to me, as I wanted to be up there today and I didn't get over there in time. Our overdose cases are at 12 right now, with 3 pending. I'm concerned about that. If you multiply that times 12, you're going to run right around 60 overdoses, which is going to be up the highest we've had. Like I said, I'm very concerned about this. We're seeing more drugs. We're using more Narcans out there in the field for EMS wise, the police officers throughout the county. It's concerning to me that our average age is at 46. There's 7 males and 5 females, 10 Caucasians and 2 African Americans. The drugs that are out there, again, are the fentanyl. Basically, cocaine has come back a lot lately, and basically a mixture. So it's concerning to me that knowing that, you know, you talk about COVID all the time, but you got to remember we still got a major problem with overdoses out there. So I get to meet with the chiefs on Monday morning there. We talk about this in front of, and the KMEGs are there. And I know they're all doing their jobs. What they're doing, it's just continuing a lot of overdoses. You'd be surprised the number of Narcan saves that they have, and in both ERs and the police departments. We could be double our figure right now if it wasn't for them, and I thank them.
Mr. Snipes has a question.
I'm just curious. I don't know if you have the answer. Maybe Jim Rowe would, but that grant that came in, that $732,000 that basically come from the cannabis, and I know that it's funding teen court and some other things, but I would be curious if that some additional fund, not additional, well, additional funding for you, if being able to sit at that table, would you be able to secure under the purpose of educating individuals, wherever as you already do at the high schools and things of that nature and the colleges, some of that money, I think it would be great in that area of educating individuals, whether with the COVID. I know a lot of students are at home, so I don't know how your program is going forth, but I do know you don't limit it just to schools, but the churches and things of that nature. I was just wondering, did you get a seat at the table to secure some of that funding, because it looks like it would be advantageous for your department, considering the information that we have?
Basically, no, I haven't had that opportunity to talk about that. I would love to try to see if I can secure any extra money for education, because that's what we need to have right now. That's fentanyl out there that people have to understand. I mean, we just had a person that just getting out of jail, wasn't even out of jail 12 hours, and he became one of my deceased in less than 12 hours after being out of jail. Unbelievable. I will look into that, Mr. Snipes, on that, and talk to Mr. Rowe on that too. Unless Jim has an answer on that.
Yeah, those funds were granted by ICEJA. They're for limited purposes, and they're granted to the nonprofits that are in the collaborative, so that all that money went to the school district for the programs it applied for. Of course, you know, addiction education, prevention can be a part of each of those programs. So in other words, the audience will be there if your office wanted to come and speak to them about these topics. But as far as grant funds being allocated toward that, we'd have to wait until the next round.
Ms. Parker had a question here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gessner, I've been watching the news and reading the news about cartels bringing drugs over the border. They're trying to get as many as they can, but do you see an increase in drug use in this area in the future because of this?
As you probably read in the paper about what KMEG got, those 8,000 pills that were mixed with fentanyl and cocaine, and that came through our United States Post Office wise. I think that they have the opportunity, and all the law enforcement is working on this here, because that's something that it's going to happen. I'm seeing more out there, and like I say, with the amount of saves that are going on through the Narcan, that's what's telling me that it's going to be an uprise on that. And here you got your money coming out through everybody getting $1,600 and sometimes more than that. Last time we had almost 6 overdoses in a week time, all on stimulus. Well, I'm concerned about that also too. I would love to get out and do more education on that. I think that's what we need to have. We are working with Herscher High School right now, doing a Zoom program for their prom, which is going to hopefully come out real well, and hopefully within the next few months down the line here, maybe I'll have that release to be able to get out there and do a little bit more teaching. I do use the press every once in a while on this to let them know exactly where we are in this county.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Any other questions there? Mr. Gessner, you had some surplus equipment.
Yes, I'm ready to go with that. I requested to Chairman Wheeler, I have some following equipment because there are 3 Motorola radios equipment that are no longer utilized, and we have all of them upgraded, and I'd like to be able to sell those if possible.
Motion to declare surplus.
Mr. Lear made the motion to declare
Second.
surplus.
Second.
Mr. Kester seconds that. Go ahead, Kelly.
Mr. Hess,
Kester.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Snipes,
Must be the Irish in here.
Ms. Peters,
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Daryl Smith, Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter, Mr. Collins, Mr. Kenneth Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Thank you. Bob, was there anything else that you need to share with us?
Well, lately we've been doing a couple of private autopsies, and we've been noticing our outside people that come to our morgue. We haven't updated our fees in the morgue for within the last 5 years, I believe, and it's getting to be costly. We're watching that pretty heavily. Everything has gone up, and but we've not pushed our fees up. So I introduced, I think you have the piece of paper there, effective July 1st of 2021. We have some updates for the morgue usage, for our x-rays, for our private autopsies, our storage, and our personnel when we have to use our personnel to come in to do the private. So I can't touch too much on the doctor's fees. That's their fees that they use, but the rest of that is this all comes back to the morgue. This is money that we're spending out there that we can up that. Like I said, we haven't upped it in 5 years, and that's what I want to do if it's possible.
Thank you, Bob. Any other questions for Mr. Gessner? All right. I would entertain a motion. Is that how we do this? Pardon? Don't we have to vote on accepting all of those reports? Okay. All right. Any new business? Any new business from Zoom? Very good. Larry, do you have something?
Yes, since Mr. Hess cannot be here, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you.
Peter, second.
Peter, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And as soon as we get switched over here, we'll be on to